Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky. Welcome to episode 3 of my new and exciting podcast. Well, I want to first do a little bit of business. Some people have said, it was interesting, I got some emails, people said, where's episode 2? Episode 2 went up on Thursday. Just like I said, it's going to go up on every Thursday. Episode 2 went up. And I told them, you should subscribe. Now, if you watch this on YouTube, there's a little button to subscribe on YouTube. If you go to my website, there's a place to subscribe on my website. If you watch this on Torah anytime, you can ask for an alert anytime a new speaker, a particular speaker that you're following, puts it on. So from all these different places, etc., well, we're over 3,000, which is pretty good. It's a start. Like I say, we have just a little less than 7,000 to go to reach my first goal, and that's really exciting. Those people are interested in sponsorships. We are working on that to be able to get that going, and we want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity to participate in this project because, like I say, this is really me trying to reach out to all of the people who, for whatever reason, want to hear from me. Yeah. And like I say, we have our regular shiurim, and on the subject of bits of business, I have a trip to the United States coming up. And I just want to tell you about those upcoming events, just so you know about them. And that is the Shabbos of November 2nd and 3rd. Shkoyach. My producer is, we have audio-visual here. The Shabbos of the 2nd and 3rd, I'm going to be Young Israel of Houston. Those of you who happen to be in Texas or nearby, certainly welcome to come. Monday night, I'm going to be speaking in Scottsdale, Arizona. And would love to see you there if possible. November 6th, I'm going to be speaking in Flatbush, 1102 Coney Island Avenue for Sister to Sister. Right now, Wednesday and Thursday are still available if you're interested in having me come and speak. The Shabbos of the 9th, I'm doing a Shabbos in the Syrian community in Flatbush. Sunday, November 11th, I'll be speaking in the 5 towns for Chazak. Monday is still open. Tuesday, I'll be speaking for Chazak in Ezra Academy in Forest Hills. Wednesday night, I'll be speaking in Staten Island. And that's it. And the next Shabbos at this point is still available, the 15th and the 16th. So I'm going to be going for a while, being in America. If anybody wants to see me live, it's just like this, only I'm bigger. I meet people, they say, oh, I watch you on the internet. And I say, well, you know, I'm taller in real life. And they said, no, I have a big screen. I'm actually small in real life. I try to follow your comments and suggestions. We're still working on a title. The producer has not decided yet which title we're going to go with. But somebody suggested that not only should I be sitting in front of Sfarim, but I should also have an armchair. So now I have an armchair that I'm sitting in. And that's going to be paid for by contributions. So, maybe I'll get a taller one, you know what I mean? And, maybe I'll get a haircut while we're doing this. And, who knows what? The possibilities are endless with the support. Somebody wrote in. Now, most people have not said this. One person said this, and I'm just throwing it out there, They said, when I listen to your regular shiurim, you're really very funny because you have a live audience. But now you don't have a live audience, so I don't think your humor works. So there's really nothing I can do because I only come in one flavor, and if you don't like it, there's not much I can do. But he suggested bringing in an audience, and it's going to be a little hard because this is my living room, and it could be if we get enough sponsorships, then I'll be able to move either to a studio or buy myself a much larger house. And I'm prepared to do either one for you because that's how I care about you. Okay? So, all right, that's all of our business. Let's get down. This is Parshas Vayeira. And what should we talk about? I was looking this over. There's so many great things to talk about, so many themes. Yeah? There's a I was bouncing. There's one that I want to focus on that I think is really interesting, and that's a contrast from last week to this week. I actually gave a share on this once, but the contrast of the two stories are, I think definitely worth a study. Last week, Abraham goes down with Sarah to Egypt. And he says to her, do me a favor and say that you're my sister, because otherwise they'll kill me and they'll take you. And that's not going to work out well for everybody. You know, trust me here. So she says, I'm your sister. So Paro takes her, right? With ill intent. Yeah. And what was the result? The result was that he got struck with plagues, which is what Paros do best. Yeah. And so Paro calls in Avraham and says, why did you lie to me? Why did you say she's my sister? What kind of a person does things like this? I almost, look at the sufferings we went through because of you. Nothing to say for yourself, huh? Fine, go. And Avram goes. And this week he comes to Avimelech. And Avimelech is a little bit of a different story. He shows up there and he says, she's my sister, and he takes him, and he didn't do anything. Yeah? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to him in a dream and says, oh, you're going to die because you took this married woman. He says, what do you want from me? I asked him, he said, she's my sister. I asked his workers, his camel drivers, I said, who's this woman? He said, it's his sister. I checked around. Well, what could I do? Yeah, I did the best that I could, right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, fine, give him back. He's a Navi, he'll daven for you, you guys will get better, and fine. And he brings in Avraham, and it's sort of the same scene. And he says, how could you do this? What a terrible thing to do. We almost got killed because of you. What a terrible thing. How could you do something like this? And Avram says nothing. And Avimelech follows through with another sentence. And he says, what did you see in us that made you do this? Now Avraham answers. And he says, I tell you the truth. I came to town. And somebody comes to town, and they're strangers. So what do you ask them? Do you have a place to stay? You know, who can I get you anything? Do you need food? Do you need a place to stay? How can we accommodate you? I come to town, they say, who's the girl? I said, oh boy. Yeah, this is a place where if the first question they ask you, they don't ask you, iske achile v'shtiya. They ask you, iske ishtai? Open parentheses. There were some people in the town of Beitar, which is a community outside of Yerushalayim, and they have Mahadran buses. And evidently people were coming for Shabbos, and they didn't know they were Mahadran buses, and they were sitting with their wives. And so one Shabbos, the community felt they needed to say something, and they put up big posters. And they wrote, to all of the people visiting us for Shabbos, please note that our buses are Mahadran buses, and please don't sit with your wife on the buses. Yeah, that's the posters they put up. Through poor planning, it was Parshas Vayeira. So somebody wrote at the bottom of the poster, a stranger comes to town. Do you ask him about food and lodging, or do you ask him about his wife? You understand, timing is everything. I think it's really important. You have to be careful. Yeah, I might tell this story again when we get to Baloscha, but it's Parshas Baloscha, and there was a yeshiva here in Yerushalayim years ago. This is an old story. You'll see how old the story is. Yeah, and the guys were sitting one day, and they said they used to like going to this restaurant on the Lower East Side called Shmulke Bernstein's. He had deli, he had Chinese, and everybody was talking about what their favorite thing is. And finally one guy said, enough. If you were there right now, what would you order? And he writes down everybody's order. And he says, would you buy this if you were there right now? The guy says, yes. Would you pay $20 for a delivery charge? He says, yes. So he collects $20 from the 50 bucks, comes to $1,000, and he buys a ticket. And they choose one guy. And his instructions are to go directly to New York, take a cab to Shmulke Bernstein's, put in the order, fill it up, pack up his suitcases, come back to the airport, and bring it back. And they ate like you can't believe. And through poor planning, it was Parshas Baloscha. And the mashgiach gets up and he says, "Oi, we remember the boss as a dogim, as a boss of the meat that we ate for chinam and chutz la'aretz." And he goes on all about this, and then he stops and he goes, "Is it true?" So, point of reference: if you're going to send somebody to America to bring you back lots of meat, don't do it on Parshas Vayeira. And if you're going to make a comment about somebody's wife, don't do it on Parshas Vayeira, right? Okay. So he says, so I was a little nervous. And he says, and you should know, I didn't lie. She goes, she is my sister. She's my half-sister. She's not my complete sister. Fine. That's the answer he gives Avimelech. How come he answered Avimelech and he didn't answer Paro? So obviously you see that Avimelech was asking, but it was more than that. It was more than that. I have taught for years in a rabbinical training program. And the area that I deal with is essentially Jewish outreach. I have some experience during my years in Jewish outreach. And one of the courses that I give, one of the parts of the course is how to answer basic questions on Judaism. And we make a list. I have everybody submit their list of questions, and we collate them into sections. And I add some of my own that I think they need to know how to answer, etc. And we deal but we go through the basic questions in Judaism. But I start by explaining how to answer questions. There's a way to answer someone's question. The first thing you have to know is to figure out whether it's a question or a statement. And people, and I've seen this many times, people feel obligated to answer a statement. Don't answer a statement. Only answer questions. I got an email recently where somebody said to me, I found myself in this situation, and I remember Rabbi Orlofsky said this, and this is and I always give them this advice. When a person says to you, I think Judaism is unfair to women, that's not a question, that's a statement. When a person says, I don't think Judaism is relevant today, yeah, that is a statement. Here is one of my favorites. I've heard this. I've read this. People do this. Nothing anybody says it's impossible to prove there's a God, and nothing anybody says is going to convince me there's a God. Go ahead. Do you know I saw people take the bait? I said, did you hear the man? The man just said, nothing you say is going to convince me there's a God. Go ahead. But it doesn't matter what you say, because at the end, the person's going to go, I'm not convinced. Of course he's not convinced. Because he already told you he's not going to be convinced. There was a Reform rabbi who once wrote a whole book on how nobody can prove the existence of God. And somebody sent me a copy of the article, not the book, but the article about the book, and said, why don't you write to him and explain to him? I said, the man just wrote an entire book about how nobody's going to prove to him there's a God. You think I'm going to say something to him and he's going to go, oh, I guess I was wrong. Let me bring back all the copies of my book. He wrote a book about it. I used to say there's 3 types of people who ask questions, right? There are people whose entire life is dedicated to a question, and there is nothing you're going to say that is going to answer them, because that's their whole existence. Their whole existence is wrapped up in this question. And it's amazing how I've met people who, I'll give an answer on something and they'll say, well, that's rather simplistic. And I said, okay, what's your objection to it? Well, I can't even begin to explain. Because it's so complicated. I said, try. I was pretty smart. People have said I'm pretty smart. Try me. Let's hear your arguments. Well, I can't even begin. Of course I can't begin to explain it to you. Because if you answer my question, you have removed my entire existence. My entire existence is only on a question. I don't like to quote secular sources, but The Princess Bride, there was this character, Antia Montoya, and his byline was, you killed my father, prepared to die. His entire life was dedicated to finding his father's murderer. That was it, for revenge. And eventually he finds him and he kills him. So at the very end, the hero says to him, what are you going to do now? And he says, I've dedicated my entire life to revenge. It doesn't leave you many options. That's it. My whole life was spent on this one thing, finding this guy and killing him. Now what do I do? What do I do now? Yeah. And this is an amazing thing because you find this all the time, you know. This is something that bears another discussion. Maybe we'll talk about this a different time. But it's just I'm bringing this as a sort of a throwaway idea just to show you this. You know, I know older singles who are read a guy, and they say, this guy is not for me on any level. Sometimes they even go with the guy and they say, "Oh, terrible, not for me, not read." And their sister marries him, and they're so angry. Why should my sister? Look at this, my sister got married. But you didn't want this guy. He wasn't for you. You knew he wasn't for you. Doesn't matter. Well, you see, sometimes people get divorced. Now, very often, when somebody divorces somebody, it's because they don't like them. Often, they don't like them a lot. Yeah? And then, at some point, their ex gets remarried, and they're furious. Why should he be happy? What do you care? We got rid of him. You don't want him. You threw him out. I forgot which card game it is. What is it? Maybe it's rummy. You know, you're collecting like you're trying to get fours. You know what I mean? You throw out a 4 of spades and somebody takes it. You throw out the next card and somebody takes it. And you get so angry, but you didn't need those cards. They weren't helping you, and you threw them away. What do you care if somebody else took it? You know, but. That's it. So somehow we remain so invested and so wrapped up in things that are from our past. Yeah. But like I said, that's a whole nother discussion. There's a lot more to say about that. But be that as it may. Yeah. When a person his entire life is dedicated to a question, then there are people who are seriously interested in getting an answer to a question. They'll read a book, they'll go to a course, they'll listen to a series of shiurim. They're really interested in this question, and they will pursue it. The remaining 98% of people ask questions and could care less about the answer. And tell me if this has ever happened to you, because it's happened to me, and I've seen it happen to other people. Somebody asks you a question, and they say it with a lot of passion. And it happens to be a question you actually know the answer to. And you start giving them the answer, and they get this sort of like bored look on their face, you know. And sometimes they even say, "Stop lecturing me." And you're surprised because you asked me the question. That's because you thought they cared. They don't care about the question. Most people don't even care about the question. I used to work in yeshivas where they used to have an Ask the Rabbi session. They stopped. Now it's Stump the Rabbi. Posing questions that would cross a rabbi's eyes. I don't want the answer. I just want a question. And people ask questions. I don't care about the answers. It's an amazing thing. You find this in the Gemara many times. A Tzaduki or somebody like that asks a question, and the Chacham give an answer. And the Gemara says, "Okay, but what's the real answer?" That's a decoy. You knock it off. It doesn't really answer the question. I was in a car with Reb Moshe. I was driving Reb Moshe Shapiro, and somebody was in the car wanted Reb Moshe to appreciate who I was. It's always a bad idea. There's nothing to be gained from that, but he wanted Reb Moshe to appreciate who I am. So he tells over one of my little exchanges, yeah, where this girl asks me, "Do you allow women to learn Gemara?" I said, "Now, by the way, it may sound like a question, but it's really a statement. If you listen to it, do you allow women to learn Gemara?" I said, "I don't allow or disallow anything." For those of you who are just listening, I'm smiling broadly. Because does it bother you when women learn Gemara? You see, now I'm going to get into your emotional makeup. I said, "No, it doesn't bother me, but most things don't bother me." So now she says, if a girl would ask you, should she learn Gemara, what would you tell? "Oh, that's a question." And I said to her, quite honestly, "What do you care? You obviously think girls should learn Gemara, right?" She says, "Right." I said, "So why are you asking me? I just want to hear what you want to say." "No, you don't. You want to argue with me, perhaps? You want to fight with me, perhaps? You want to use me to bring your view across. This was in a public setting, but you don't care what I have to say. Because if you cared what I had to say, then you'd come over and ask me a question. Yeah? So she says, no, I'm sure there's people who want to ask. Fine. I said, the Gemara says for a girl to learn Gemara, it's tiflis. So, now, however you understand tiflis, it's not a good thing. Nobody suggests that tiflis is a good thing. Translate it any way you want. So she says to me, well, the Gemara was talking about a different time, and it was different things, and it was different people, and this, and that, and it doesn't apply today. I said, so when the Gemara talks, it doesn't understand women. Right. It's not modern. Right. Then what do you want to learn it for? Now, that more or less answered, basically settled the discussion. Now, without going into the pros and cons of my answer or my discussion, which doesn't really matter. I've been criticized for this from time to time, but, I don't really care. But it's the idea is a clever observation. That's all. I just want to be clever because, does it answer the question? It doesn't really answer the question. Yeah. So this fellow says it over to Reb Moshe in my name. I'm sitting there, keeping my eyes on the road. So Reb Moshe turns and he says, you understand that's not the real answer? And I said, yes, I understand. It was a dichoy. Yeah. When a person is just asking, so then circumcision is barbaric. I said, no, it's not. Barbarians don't do it. You know how many times that answer has stood? No, by the way, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. It's a dichoy. It pushes it off, And it's always a yeshiva guy who says, I read in National Geographic about this tribe in Africa that does circumcision. I said, shkoyach, you found the barbarian. Who does it, Is that the point? You understand? Because that's not the real answer, obviously. When you're trying to understand Bris Milah, it doesn't really make a difference whether barbarians do it or not, yeah? But when a person's not really interested, so when a person poses a question, yeah, so most people don't even care about the question. Forget about the answer. It's mind-boggling, yeah, mind-boggling. I could speak English if I had to. I've been living in Israel now for 30 years. I haven't gained any Hebrew, but I've been forgetting my English. But it's mind confusing that a person will ask a question. Goes, do you really think Judaism is relevant today? Yes. Really? Yes. Thought it wasn't. No, it is. Oh. How come Judaism is so unfair to women? It's not. It's not? No. I thought it was. Nope. Okay. None of that answers the questions. But if you don't care about the question, can you prove there's a God? Yes. Really? Yeah, I thought you can. Yeah, I can. You want to hear it? No. It's just enough to know there is an answer. I don't even have to know what the answer is. Because I don't care that much about the question. It's a famous story with Reb Itzel Harif, where he goes down to the yeshiva in Volozhin to find a husband for his daughter. And he asks the kasha. And everybody comes over and tries to give a teretz, and he shlugs them all up. And there was nobody there. Okay, he gets in his carriage to ride away, and one baruch runs after. And he says, you have a teretz? He goes, no, forget about your daughter. What's the answer? He says, that's what I want for my daughter. I don't have to know the answer, but I have to care about the answer. I have to care. Most people don't care. Because most people do what most people do, because that's what most people do. And this is one of my yesodis, and I say it over all the time, and it remains true. Most people do what most people do, because that's what most people do. And I'm not arguing the pros and cons of whether or not what they're doing is right or wrong. Rav Ruderman, Zatzal, Shiva of Ner Yisrael, tells the story that when he was in Europe during World War I, he saved up his money, penny by penny, to buy himself a pair of tzitzis. Now, I don't know if his tzitzis were puzzle. He didn't have tzitzis. He just wanted to. I don't know any of the details. This is how I heard the story. I'm telling it over. And he went to show it to his Rebbe, the Alta of Slobodka, and he says, look, Rebbe, I bought a new pair of tzitzis. And the Alta looks at it and he says, maybe you should have given the money at tzedakah. That's World War I. People don't have food to eat, So when Rav Ruderman tells over this story in America, everyone starts nodding. Sure. And Rav Ruderman says, nay, you missed the point of the story. If I would have said to him, Rebbe, I saved up my money, I gave it to tzedakah, he would have said to me, maybe you should have bought a pair of tzitzis. Because are you thinking, or are you just doing what everybody does? Yeah? When I used to teach in seminary, I messed up many, many girls. So like they'd go out on a date and the boy says, I want to learn long term. And the girl would say, why? And the guy would get all flustered because everybody learns that's what you do. Because everyone does what everyone does. I had a student, she was getting married, and she went to a well-known sheitel macher. Now this story is years old, and I don't know if it's still true, but this is the Maisa Shahaya. Went to a well-known sheitel macher, she starts giving her the sheitel, and she starts pulling out some of her bangs in the front. And the girl says, no, I want it all covered. He says, no, this is how they wear it today. She says, I understand, but I want it all covered. And she started to yell at her. Should I tell you which Rebbitzins wear like this? Should I tell you which Rosh Yeshiva's wife wears like this? You're firmer than everybody. Just do what everybody does, because that's what everybody does. Why are you stopping to think? It's a scary thing. Well, I'm going to talk about this more, because this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. But most people who ask questions, they don't really care about the answers. Yeah. So when a person asks me a question that's a statement, I say, oh. It's the most neutral answer I could come up with. I don't think Judaism is relevant today. Oh. I think Judaism is that. Oh. I think all these rabbis are that. Oh. And that's fine. Because most people don't care about what you have to say. It's an absolutely amazing thing. When I was younger, I used to think that everybody wants to hear what I have to say. The older I get, I realize that there are so few people who really care what you have to say. You know? And sometimes people will ask you a direct question, and it's clear that they don't care what you have to say. Girl asked me the following question, and I'm not getting into the answer. I want you to understand the question. Just listen to the question. This girl says to me, I love playing basketball, and I only get my fulfillment from playing basketball. And I can't play with the girls, because girls don't know how to play basketball. Yeah? Whether this is true or not, whether this is sexist or not, I really don't care. I'm telling you a story, all right? Keep all the angry emails. Save them for something else. Anyway, I'll say enough controversial things before we're done. Anyway, so she says, I can't play with girls. So I play with the boys. But Jewish boys can't play basketball either. Yeah, they don't know how to play basketball either. Jackie Mason once said, he says, affirmative action. He says, if a black can get into college with a lower SAT score, then a Jew should be able to play basketball with a lower net. It should be the regular net, and then it's a little short one that the Jew could walk over and drop the ball in. This is the boys can't, the Jewish kids, the Jewish boys can't play basketball. So I would go down to the schoolyard and I would play, with the blacks and Puerto Ricans who were playing, basketball, and they were very good, and they let me play because I was so good. Anyway, I came to seminary, and I mentioned this to one of my rabbis, and one of my rabbis says, you can't play with, non-Jewish boys. It's not sneeze. You can't do it. She said, but that's the only way I find my fulfillment. This is afal piking. You can't do it. So I asked another rabbi. He also told me I can't do it. But that's the only way I find my fulfillment. So she says to me, so what should I do? And I said, it's a very hard question. I'll have to research it. I have to look into it. And she would come over to me periodically throughout the year, and she'd say, did you find an answer yet? And I said, no, not yet. And finally, somebody overheard this conversation and said, what's the question? I told him the question. He goes, why is that a hard question? I said, because she can't hear the answer. The hardest questions to answer are the ones that you can't answer. I'm going to tell you a Maisa Shahaya. I have a dear friend who is the Rav of the Aguda of the Five Towns, Rav Yitzchak Frankel Shlita. And he's a Musmach from Moshe, and Moshe Feinstein. And evidently somebody printed this. He told me this story. I hope it was for publication. If not, I apologize. But it's just between us. It's only a few thousand people. And somebody had printed a speech that Moshe Feinstein gave to the Tzeiria Gudis Yisrael about how you're not allowed to go to college. So he says, that's ridiculous. We all went to college. So I went to Reb David. I said, look what they put out the name of Reb Moshe. He says, yeah, Reb Moshe made the speech. He says, he was against college? He says, yeah. He says, but we all went to college. He says, and Reb David looked at me and said, Frankel, and if we would have told you not to go, would you have listened? Pyro asked the question, but he didn't want an answer. And Avram understood that. So shook his head, said, oh, and he left. Avimelech asked the question. He was angry. Avram didn't answer. And then he says, help me understand what you were thinking. Oh, you really want an answer? Then I'll give you an answer. There are people who ask us questions, and sometimes the questions are not really a question, they're a confrontation. And what we need to do is just recognize it for what it is. And if you're being challenged, the best thing to either say is nothing or, oh. Have a great Shabbos, everybody. I hope to see you in America. And if anybody wants me for those available dates, you can contact me through my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com, and hope to see you then.